Hello, Georgetown. I'm Beverly Enos, and this is Spotlight Georgetown. You have obviously found us. We're on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on your local cable station. As we go through the cable process, if you've watched the show before, you've heard it, but we would love to have you come down and join us. If you'd like to learn how to run the cameras, if you would like to learn how to do some of the editing, if you would like to be interviewed, or if you know someone else that would like to be interviewed, if you have something to share with the town, would love to know about it. So please join us. Now today we're talking to Paul Lowenstein, and he's here to talk about a new water conservation project that we've got going on here in Georgetown. And this is brand new, as in I just heard about it 2 days ago. Yep. And it's going to be something quite different than what we've seen. Now, Paul, you're not actually from Georgetown. You are from?
I'm from Sharon, which is about an hour away from here. It's a long way off.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I know it with your schedule. What part of this project are you involved in? What's your background? You are the professional that's coming in on this project, obviously.
Well, I'm basically coming at it from the point of view of an ordinary citizen who has been working with water conservation in my hometown of Sharon for the last 7 years. George Comiskey of the Parker River Clean Water Association contacted me. He had heard about our experience in Sharon and heard what results we'd gotten, and so he called me up last summer and asked if I would be interested in collaborating with him in writing a water conservation grant to get support from the Department of Environmental Protection to encourage water conservation here in Georgetown.
Now, we got the grant, $50,000?
That's right.
And it's from?
The Department of Environmental Protection, the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, so this is a grant that was applied for by George with your help.
That's right.
And the town has $50,000 to spend on this project.
Yes, that's correct.
Up to.
Yes.
Up to.
Right.
Okay. Now, what does the grant cover? What type of work are we talking here?
The grant will have basically 3 parts. One is public outreach and trying to work with the community. One is through the schools, the public schools, and working with the children in the elementary school to encourage them to become more aware of water conservation. And the third part involves some leak detection equipment that the Georgetown Water Department will use to hunt out leaks and repair them.
Now, these would be leaks in the streets, or?
Yes,
okay.
Water mains,
water
as opposed to residential leaks within the home, yes.
I mean, we don't think about it, but why is this type of conservation needed in Georgetown?
Well, there are a variety of good reasons. One is the environment. The Parker River has been classified by the State Water Resources Commission as highly stressed. During hot, dry summers, not every summer, but in hotter, drier summers, the river actually can run dry. And that's a big problem for a variety of wildlife, of course. If you're any kind of, like Blanding's turtles, for example. There's a group in Georgetown that works with Blanding's turtles and trying to bring them back, and they need the water. Also, herring are in decline in the river. And the herring, of course, have economic significance because they support cod and stripers, recreation and commercial fisheries that are important to the region. So, and it's nice to have a herring run. I remember when I was a kid, I went down to the herring run in Brewster. My parents took me, and I remember sticking my hand in the water and feeling the fish bumping up against my hand, you know, when they're rushing up from the sea. And that's just a miracle of nature that I would hope that future generations could enjoy. And I'd like to see what could be done to improve conditions in the river to improve the condition for the herring.
Now, we think of Georgetown because we have our own well system, our town water.
That's right.
It's actually groundwater wells.
That's correct.
Now, what would that have to do with the Parker River?
Well, groundwater and surface water are intimately connected. If you can imagine, if you pump water out of the ground, what happens is the water table subsides. And if the water table subsides, the river subsides. So the river can just sort of subside into the ground and you're left with an empty riverbed. So the more water we take out of the ground, the less water is left over for wetlands, rivers, things like that that support the local ecosystems.
So they do go hand in hand,
Yes, they do.
but one does not necessarily affect our drinking water as much as it does just the water in our own area.
Well, let me address that question. You asked before, why should Georgetown conserve water? And I offered the environmental argument. There's also an economic argument. For one thing, your water bill will be lower. Another thing is the water quality can actually be better. The town of Georgetown not only has 3 wells, but it has a filtration facility that removes iron and manganese and other undesirable things from the water. And the harder you push that facility, the more water you try to shove through it, the less effective it is at removing those contaminants. So that if we use less water, we can actually potentially have a beneficial effect on our water quality. And of course, as I mentioned, the water bill and the cost of providing water to the town is an important consideration when you're talking about the reasons why to conserve.
How much water did you actually save in Sharon with this? Now, you've done this project already in Sharon.
Yes, well,
Okay.
actually, I joined the water committee in 2003, so I've been at it for about 7 years. And during that time, we have reduced our average withdrawals from approximately 575 million gallons a year down to last year, in 2009, we got it under 450. From 575 to 450, it's more than 20% reduction. It's more than 100 million gallons per year. It's an awful lot of water, and it's making a big difference in Sharon.
What kind of a difference?
Well, for starters, we're improving our local environment.
Okay.
Our streams don't run dry when we don't take as much water out of the ground. We also are saving about $70,000 per year in the cost of electricity to pump the wells and chemicals to treat the water. $70,000 a year is more than the cost of the water conservation program, including rebates and our water conservation coordinator, which is just a part-time position, but that's enough. So the investment we made in water conservation is paying back in just the cost of electricity and chemicals alone, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, because we've got all this new development coming to Sharon, like a mall with 10 acres of floor space, 624 unit residential development with 150 bed nursing home, all this new, and that's not all. We have a lot of new development, and to accommodate this surge in development, we have a choice. We can either conserve the water elsewhere and use our water more efficiently to accommodate the new development, or we can turn to MWRA and pay through the nose to import more water. So and that would cost millions. So the economic benefits are profound.
And that would be the same in Georgetown.
Well,
We would be saving.
I've heard that Georgetown is interested in new development, and I would point out that in Georgetown, which is similar to Sharon, Georgetown and Sharon are both very near the limit that MWRA imposes on the town for the amount of water you can take out of the ground. So if you want to have the option of bringing, not everybody wants economic development, that's a whole nother argument, but if you want to keep your options open, you have to have the capacity to accommodate new development with your water supply, and conserving can accomplish that.
How much water does an average person, this is in a residential, how much water does an average person use per year?
Well, the state standard, which is what the water
Or per
permit,
day, yeah.
the state standard that is the basis for the permit that limits how much water you can take is 65 gallons per capita per day. So you take the census of people in town that are on town water, and not everybody is, but the census is on town water, and multiply by 65 gallons per person per day, and that's how much water you're allowed to take. In 2008, Georgetown used about 67 gallons per person per day. So it's real close, and probably with a minimal amount of effort we could get under that limit. But I would point out that my own personal water use in my own household is it's less than 25 gallons per person per day. And just like Georgetown, Sharon's also near the state standard of 65. So if we're using 25 and the average is 65, someone else must be out there using 105 to make it average out. So there's a lot of low fruit. There's a lot of inefficient water use that we can address and really make a big difference.
Okay, so what can we in Georgetown, what type of trimming can we do? realistically, what type of things are we looking at?
Well, the place to start is with summer water use, because if you look at a graph of water use, you will see that it's pretty modest in the cold winter months when nobody's using water outdoors, and then it spikes up in summer, ironically the time when the environment can least afford to part with it. So that's the place to start. And the other thing about summer water use is that that big spike is mostly driven by what I call non-essential water use. I mean, we have to have water to drink. We have to have water to clean with, clean our clothes, take showers, etc. That's essential. We can't do without that. But, you know, cosmetic water use for landscaping purposes is optional.
We're talking sprinklers and people washing their cars and
That's
all of
right.
this type of water that, especially sprinkler systems
Right.
that go on automatically whether they need it or not.
Yeah, as a member of the water committee in Sharon, one of the complaints that I hear most frequently from my fellow citizens when I inform them that I'm on the water committee, they say, why does my neighbor run his sprinkler when it's raining out? And it's because it's automated.
Right.
And people just put it on autopilot and forget about it, and it winds up using a lot of water unnecessarily. And actually, ironically, that water use can actually cause more harm to the lawn than not watering by virtue of stimulating fungi and things that thrive when it's too moist. So you can actually be setting yourself back unwittingly by applying too much irrigation water.
So the fact that I don't have a green lush lawn all the time is a good thing, right?
Well, that's a matter of you know, you'd have to look into it.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways is cutting back on the amount of
summertime.
water in the summertime.
Yeah.
And that would be primarily watering the lawns, washing cars,
Yeah.
anything else?
That's the lawn watering is the big one.
Okay.
The big gorilla, so to speak. But there's more to it than just lawn irrigation. In summer, about 2/3 of the water we use is used indoors. Still, even though it jumps
Really?
up, yeah, it's still the bigger part of summer use is indoor water use. I mean, people sweat more in the summers. That means they have to do more laundry. It means they have to take longer showers or more frequent showers. So if you have efficient washing machine, if you have efficient shower heads, that will reduce that effect in the summer.
So we're talking energy saving type appliances.
Well,
Especially
it's
washers.
funny you mention energy, because energy is an important component of the water picture. Not only the energy it takes to heat water, but the energy it takes to pump the water up from the ground and push it to our homes. So it is an important factor. But yeah, indoor water use is, water conservation is the sum of all these little, I call them tributaries. You know, you save a little here, save a little there, and you wind up saving a lot if everybody saves something.
So the biggest indoor water uses would be showers and washing clothes?
The number one water use indoors is toilets.
Wow.
Followed by washing machines, shower heads, faucets, and leaks. In that order. Those are the big five.
So what can we do about those?
Well, in Sharon, what we did to address that was we set up a rebate program, which hopefully we'll succeed in doing. There's actually a component of the grant funding is for to fund a rebate program for washing machines and toilets. Old toilets are very wasteful. They use sometimes, typically 3.5 gallons per flush, but they can use up to 5 or even 7 gallons per flush if they're really old. The new modern low-flow toilets use 1.6 gallons per flush, and there's a whole new generation of high-efficiency toilets that use less than 1.3 gallons per flush. So they've really, the technology has come a long way. When they first imposed that low-flow toilet thing in the early 90s, they got a bad rap because they didn't work. They had to be flushed twice. People were very unsatisfied with it, and actually it was a case of government getting ahead of industry, imposing these requirements, but industry not being ready to deliver the goods. In the meantime, in the last couple of decades, industries leapfrog ahead of government, and they have this whole new generation. They've re-engineered the toilet so they can actually get the job done better with even less water than the government requirement of 1.6. So we've got a rebate program in Sharon for the 1.3 gallon toilets, and a lot of people are taking advantage of that and saving money on their water bills.
Now, I was always told if a toilet is running, it just goes through more and more and more and more water.
Oh yeah, leaky toilets are very costly
So
when it comes to your water bill.
All right, it's called the plumbing. The same thing with dripping faucets.
Yep.
Because it's amazing how much water can actually be used.
Yep.
Because I had a friend that all of a sudden the water bill jumped almost a third,
Yeah.
and they found it was just leaky faucets, and they had them fixed, and all of a sudden the water bill went back down.
Yep, you have to pay attention to that. And one easy way to tell if you've got a leak in your house is just look at your water meter and see if it's running when no water is being used. If no one's in the shower and the toilet is being flushed and no water's running, but the meter's still continuing to increment, you know it's got to be leaking somewhere. So, and another way, typically, one of the most common leaks, other than the faucets that you mentioned, is leaky toilets. If you just put some food coloring in the tank and wait 15 minutes and look and see if it migrates down to the bowl, if the color doesn't get to the bowl, you know it's tight. If it gets in the bowl, then you better do something about it. You may have a leaky flapper or something like that. So.
Oh, I never knew that. That's a new one.
It's very easy to do, but many people aren't aware that there's something simple they can do. It's a cheap and easy diagnostic that you can do very quickly.
Just some food coloring in the tank.
Just put a little in there, color the water, and see if it gets down in the bowl. Wait 15 minutes. Don't flush. Just wait and see if it leaks down. Because if it's leaking, it'll wind up in the bowl, and you'll see it.
Now, one of the parts of this new grant is we're going to be putting in a volunteer water commission committee.
It's a committee. It's a water conservation committee, which will report to the water commissioners. The water commissioners make the decisions. We're modeling this after the Sharon setup, where our water committee reports to the water commissioners, and the commissioners decide if our recommendations make sense. Sometimes they adopt them, sometimes they reject them, sometimes they modify them. But it's a good system because we're constantly pushing the envelope, so to speak, and trying to encourage new ideas and try new things. And we've done some things and withdrawn them later, some things that didn't work, but we've gradually, and there's still, it's a work in progress. I mean, it takes a long time. We've been at this for 7 years down there. It's taken that long to squeeze down our water use, because not everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon all at once. But if you keep it up over time and set up the policies and programs that will create the incentives for people to conserve water, then it happens.
So is this committee looking for volunteers?
We've actually got 5 volunteers to step forward, and the commissioners voted on Monday night to establish the committee. The new members still have to be sworn in by the town clerk, so again, it's a work in progress. But at the moment, we've got fully staffed. But I would encourage people, if they're interested in serving on the committee, to drop in at the water department and inquire. There is an application form, and there's always turnover. There wasn't in Sharon, there will be in Georgetown. People serve for a while and then they get tired of it or whatever. So if we have some people who have expressed interest, you know, certainly we'd be happy to have anyone.
And the meetings are public, just like any
public meeting, open
meetings.
meeting law applies, yes. And we would
that's
encourage.
always posted on the cable TV.
Yeah, and it's not just a question of joining the committee or not. If you have an idea about water or you want to find out something, come to the meetings. You know, they'll be posted. And attend them, drop in, and give us the 2 cents. I'll be there at least for the 1-year grant period, and hopefully it will perpetuate itself beyond that. But if people come to the meeting and feed in their ideas, that's very helpful and useful as well.
Now, before we actually started taping today, you were talking about different types of grass seeds. Are there other things that people can do when they're like planning to put in their landscaping or planting bushes or things like that actually help conserve the water?
Yes. When I first bought my house, I didn't really know anything about taking care of the property. The former owners had a nice lawn, and I wanted to keep it that way. I'm actually proud of my lawn. I like the way it looks. It's beautiful, lush, and green. And over the years, I figured out a system for building up the organic content of the soil gradually.
Okay.
I don't remove the lawn clippings. I let them decompose in place. And over the years, that's encouraged. It has increased the organic content of the soil. And what that does is when it rains, it acts like a big sponge, holds onto the water, and during the dry periods between rain, it keeps the roots moist. I cut the lawn tall so that the taller blades shade the roots and it doesn't dry out the dirt so much. Incidentally, that lawn clipping idea saves me labor too, because
no raking.
No raking. And the thing about these new kinds of grass seed that's really interesting is that they grow really deep roots, but they also grow slower than regular grass. You don't have to mow as often, saving labor and gas, and it's just a win-win all across the board. Yeah.
Now, when this committee is formed, will they be putting information like that out to the public?
That's
so
the
that
idea.
We know about it?
That's the idea. In Sharon, we used water bill inserts to communicate. They're very informative with all kinds of lawn care tips and this sort of thing. And I think in Georgetown, we may work with the internet and a website, the town website, and put ideas up there. So we will, yes, be communicating with, providing information for the residents to figure out where to start and what they can do, what's practical and not too difficult, to start with the process.
So this is something that we get to look forward to. Some
Hopefully.
good things coming up. I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
It's been wonderful having
Beverly.
you here.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very, very much, Paul. One of the things that we're going to be finding as part of this Conservation Committee process is we have 2 meetings that are planned for March 17th and for March 31st at the Georgetown Library, 7 p.m.
Yes.
And that way you can get as much information and the committee will be formed. And these are meetings to let the public know what is going on. And we would like to invite you to join us at those meetings, and you will also get to see them on cable at a later date. I'm Beverly Enos. This is Spotlight Georgetown. Thank you for joining us. And don't forget, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.